Morning, afternoon, evening people. So we're brewing beer for a beer kit. What we're going to do is we're going to brew this, we're going to taste it at the end, do a bit of a review, see what it's like. So this is Mangrove Jack's Brewing Company, Australian Series Gold Lager. So for this brew, we need this kit, we need 1 kilo of sugar. It also says you can use 1.2 kilos of liquid malt. We don't have that, so we'll be using sugar for this. So, look at the side of the box. It says target ABV is 4.4% and the final gravity should be 1006. So first thing we want to do is boil a kettle. So I've got that boiling now. This particular brew kit comes in a bag, not in a tin. So what I like to do is just pop this bag in the sink with some hot water just for about 10 minutes, and what it does is it liquefies that a little bit more, makes it more runny when it's warm. Now this is it. This kit makes 23 litres, which is 6 US gallons of beer, which equates to 40 pints. So you'll need a 23 to 25 litre fermentation vessel. Into that we're going to pop our kilo of sugar, which is 2.2 pounds. Into that now, and add our boiling water. Let's give that a good mix. Get that sugar dissolved into our boiling water. To that now we're going to add our wort concentrate. That should dissolve into that boiling water. And the good thing is, with these that come in the bag like this, you can just roll them up. Just get out all that wort concentrate. You can also open up, fill it with boiling water and rinse it out, but in this case I'm not going to do that. Now we've got our wort and our sugar in that FV. All I'm going to do now is fill that up to the 23 litre mark with cold water. Okay, so that's us topped off. Let's add a good stir. What we're going to do now is pitch our yeast. There's no need to stir the yeast in. Literally just sprinkle it on the top. Hold our lid and airlock. What I do now is pop that in a warm spot for 7 to 10 days. You know it's completely finished. Hydrometer reading should be 1006, as it said on the box. Okay, so it's been 8 days now, so the fermentation will be complete. We're going to confirm that. We'll take a quick hydrometer reading. We're going to find out what our ABV is and see if what's in the packet is correct. I think the packet said 4.5%, so let's check that out. Okay, a couple of top tips for taking hydrometer reading using an FV. First of all, if you sterilise the hydrometer, you can pop the hydrometer straight in to the FV. Saves you having to sterilise and wash one of these as well, and saves time mucking about getting beer out of here into here to get your reading. Just get it straight in the FV as long as you sterilise this. So this has been sterilised. Then when popping your hydrometer into the FV, what you want to do is just give it a spin. So what you'll find is sometimes air bubbles will stick to it. And giving it a couple of spins will just knock those air bubbles off and stop you getting a false hydrometer reading because of air bubbles stuck to the hydrometer. Okay, I don't know where you can see that, but that's come in at about 1010. So let's go away, do the maths. Okay, so I've been away, done the maths. That comes in at 4.2%. On the packet, it says 4.5%, or 4.4% it says on the packet. So we're out by 2%, 0.2%. However, we're going to do secondary fermentation on this now in the bottles to get it fizzy. Secondary fermentation puts 0.5% ABV onto it, so it's going to bring us in at 4.6% after secondary fermentation. So, I'll quickly take you through my secondary fermentation method and explain to you exactly how that works and what it does. Okay, so I'm going roughly for around 130 grams of sugar for the secondary fermentation. That's about 137, but it's close enough. What I've found is that if I got to 150 or just above, it can be a bit too fizzy. You open the bottle and it overflows. So about 130 to 140 is fine for lager. Now this depends how fizzy you want the beer. If you're in lager, you want to be nice and fizzy, don't you? So more sugar. If you're doing an ale or a bitter or a stout, you want to be less fizzy. So in that case, I go for 100 to 110 grams of sugar for the 40 pints. In that, we're just going to add a bit of boiling water, like half a litre. This isn't going to dilute the beer too much. It won't affect the ABV. Give it a stir. Get that sugar dissolved in with the water. Now there's two ways of doing this secondary fermentation with a sugar solution. Well, in fact there's three. There's two ways if you're bottling. The third way is if you're using a keg. You put the sugar solution into the keg, siphon the beer into the keg, leave it to do a second fermentation in the keg, drink it from the keg. We're not using a keg today, we're using bottles. A keg, and they can be unreliable. A slightest leak in the keg and you will lose all the CO2 for your secondary fermentation. So using bottles, what you can do is you can make your solution up, take your volume of solution versus your amount of bottles, divide, so in this case it will be 40 bottles, divide your volume of solution by 40, whatever the figure is in mils, add that amount to each individual bottle. Now it's time consuming, fiddly, and it's a pain. The second method is you can add sugar solution into a second fermentation vessel, siphon this off into that fermentation vessel, which also has the advantage that we're going to leave the sediment behind in this FV. There's no chance of disturbing that sediment and getting more sediment mixed into the beer. There's a lot of sediment settled at the bottom here. Then you've got the sugar solution mixed evenly throughout the beer, then we bottle it directly. Some people will say, oh, you shouldn't do that, you're going to oxygenate your beer by siphoning it off into a second FV. I've never had beer oxidised using that method. On top of that, if you're kegging your beer in a Cornelius keg or a keg where you're going to carry out secondary fermentation, you'll still siphon the beer off into a keg either way. As long as you don't let that beer splash too much when it's siphoning, which I'm going to show you now as we siphon this off, you're not going to oxygenate it. So let's move on to siphoning. Now I'm using an auto siphon today, handy little thing. I'll link them in the description. You can pick up cheap on Amazon. And for bottling, using a bottling wand. If you watch any of my brewing videos, beer or cider videos, you'll see the bottling wand before, or if you do brew beer already yourself, I'm sure you know what one is. But I'll go more into that when it comes to bottling. And obviously make sure your siphon tube is sterilised and your second FV is sterilised before you move on to racking off into the second FV. Now what I like to do is raise the second FV up off the ground a little bit with a box. This is just a box full of bottles that we're going to use for bottling the beer. It makes the siphoning process a little bit easier, or starting off easier. Then we're going to start the siphoning process. And then to stop the splash that I was talking about and put more oxygen into that beer, just make sure that the siphon is up against the side of the FV. See there, a very little splash. What will happen is eventually that siphon tube will be below the surface of the liquid and we won't be getting a lot of oxygen mixed into that beer. Then what I like to do is wait until it's about a third full and then add the sugar solution. So I think then it gets mixed more evenly throughout the liquid without too much stirring. We'll give it a gentle stir at the end just to make sure the sugar solution is mixed evenly throughout the beer. But we're not going to give any kind of vigorous, we're not going to stir it vigorously at all. As we were speaking before about oxidisation, you don't want to introduce too much oxygen to that beer. So while that's siphoning off, I'll quickly explain to you a bit about secondary fermentation, just in case you don't know. Secondary fermentation, what we're doing is we're making this beer fizzy. So during the fermentation process, what happens is the yeast reacts with the sugar, turns the sugar to alcohol. A byproduct of that fermentation is CO2. Hence why you have an airlock on the top, the airlock's bubbling away, that is the CO2 escaping. Now this beer is not clear yet, it's still cloudy. So there's residual yeast in this beer when we bottle it. So what we're doing is we're adding a tiny bit more sugar to each bottle, or the entire solution in this case. What's going to happen then is that residual yeast and that little bit of sugar will have a secondary fermentation. The byproduct of fermentation, CO2, now the bottles are sealed, the CO2 can't escape. This is what makes our beer fizzy. Same principle in a keg, the keg's sealed, CO2 can't escape, you get a fizzy beer. It's important not to put too much sugar solution. So if you do, your bottles can explode, or if it's slightly too fizzy, what will happen is you'll open your bottle, it'll go, it'll just overflow, which has happened to me before. You'll just get a load of foam and you lose half your beer in foam. So yeah, there are calculators online. You can go online, use a calculator, but I have found through trial and error about 130 to 140 grams of sugar for 40 pints for a nice fizzy beer. And obviously if you want it to be less fizzy, just scale the sugar down a little bit. Now what I like to do when I'm bottling is get it set up nicely, bit of kitchen towel on the floor, that way any kind of spillages get soaked up, you don't get the kitchen floor sticky, you don't get in trouble with the wife when she walks in from work and walks onto a sticky floor. And then I just get our bottles lined up nicely, which makes it much easier and faster when we start bottling to just smash it out really quick. Obviously, make sure your bottles are sterile. They can move on to bottling, so we've started our siphon off. Now this auto siphoner, it's got a little plunger there, a valve. So when that depresses the bottom of the bottle, releases the valve, starts the siphon, we can just go along and do our bottles. What I also do is I've got one clear bottle. So that clear bottle, you can gauge how clear the beer is, because it's done at the same time as the other bottles. So you can just look at that one clear bottle and you can see, oh yeah, that beer's clear. It's ready. Now, secondary fermentation. Secondary fermentation, it's about 3 to 5 days. But you find that after 3 to 5 days, the beer won't be clear yet. Maybe about a week and it'll be clear and ready for us to drink. You can drink it cloudy, don't get me wrong. Obviously we're doing 40 bottles here today. You haven't got 40 bottles in front of us. I'm going to do these, put these in the boxes, get the next lot of bottles out. Careful not to overfill, because then we get a little bit of overflow. Not only do we waste a little bit of beer, but we potentially make a mess. Okay, so that's all our beer bottled. Obviously there's more boxes than one. What we're going to do now is put that away in a warm spot for about 5 days for secondary fermentation to complete, and then leave a few days to clear. Then what I'm going to do is I'll bring you back, we'll do a tasting of it, do a little bit of a review of that kit. And obviously once you've finished, make sure you wash all your equipment straight away, store it away dry, ready for your next brew. In my case, I've washed the equipment now, I'll put another brew on straight away. I'm going to do an Irish stout. It won't be on film, but if there's anything you want to see me brew, any kits that you've seen that you want me to brew and review for you, just drop it down in the comments. I'll see if I can find it and we'll give it a go. Now I do 1 or 2 brews a month, I can't film them all, so let me know what you want to see. Anyway, I'll bring you back in about a week, we'll pour one of these out, give it a go. Okay, so it's been 9 days, that's been in the fridge since yesterday. The secondary fermentation well and truly complete, and it should be clear, but we'll find out now. So let's crack a bottle. There you go. Second fermentation is definitely taking place. When you pour in these bottles, there's a bit of sediment just set on the bottom where it's cleared. So just pour it nice and gently. Just leave that last little bit of sediment behind at the bottom. Nice fizzy lager, and it is totally clear. So where you can see all the bubbles coming up. What it tastes. It's a very nice, straightforward, rounded lager. Definitely got aftertaste of hops in the background there. Definitely one you can sit there and have a few of those of an evening. Really nice. So, if there's anything you want me to do, beer wise, drop it in the comments. We'll make it, give it a go. If you enjoy that, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Have a good day.